Thank you. It's wonderful to be back at ISVIS presenting. It's great to follow these two speakers. I'd like to just go quickly over two projects that I've done in my work. I put in the title for Policy Wonks because the topics themselves are about inside baseball, some would say, very specific, that are a very specific audience. So my challenge is to take the research I do, which is based on big data, and present it to policy wonks. I work mainly at two places, the Jewish People Policy Institute, which is where this research is taking place, and I also have a startup with Professor Camille Fuchs, who was with me here last time, and Shmuel Rosner, and it's an Israeli data journalism website. Please check it out. And the two projects that I'm going to talk about briefly today are the view through big data, an initial analysis of 15 million tweets by AIPAC and J Street followers, and measuring the politicization of Israel in Congress. For those of you who are familiar with the Israel lobby community in America, there are two main organizations, AIPAC and J Street. AIPAC, they both consider themselves, centrist, but people would say that AIPAC is more conservative and J Street is more left-wing, but they both consider themselves pro-Israel organizations, and I wanted to look at how their followers, when they discuss Israel on Twitter, how they differ, to see if there's a difference between the way they talk about Israel. And what I love about using Twitter data is it's readily available and it's organized. So for every tweet out there, there are 90 variables of information. If it's a retweet, if it was liked, how many followers a person has, how many friends they have, how many, the time, the location, and it's through you can easily get the tweets. So what I did was I took all the followers of these two organizations, about 150, 60,000 followers, and I took their last 200 tweets. So we're talking about 15 million tweets of these followers. And I first look at all the followers' bios. So this is the first visualization of the bios. And in Twitter, you can put a few words. Actually, what Mushon introduced me, that's what my profile in Twitter is. So what I did is I took all the bios and I made a list of the top 20 words in the bios of each organization and showing how they differ. So we see AIPAC, for example, the most common word in the bio is Israel. And J Street, it doesn't come here. It's actually number 60 in the list. And in J Street, you have lots of pronouns, she, her, he, him, which you don't see in the AIPAC list. So this just but you see Jewish is something that they both have in their bios, which actually did surprise me that Jewish was basically the same among the two organizations statistically. And then I took all the tweets that mention Israel in them, and I used sentiment analysis to see the emotions of the tweets. And this is a log odds ratio of comparing the different emotions. So you see the emotion of joy is much more likely to be found in tweets about Israel by AIPAC followers, and sadness, negative, disgust, anger are more likely to be found in tweets about Israel by J Street followers. And this is looking at the sad words. If people are familiar with text mining, there's a lexicon of words associated with emotions, and so these are the words associated with the emotion of sadness that appear in tweets about Israel, and it shows how the different organizations, how the followers in different organizations are more likely to have these words in their tweets about Israel. So this is the first project, and the second project I wanted to look at the Congress in America, the House of Representatives and the Senate, how they discuss Israel. 2 minutes? Okay. And so I was starting to try to analyze make a machine learning algorithm to predict if the tweets were pro-Israel or negative or anti-Israel. And I came across something that I thought was quite interesting, that a lot of the tweets about Israel were really attacking, were political tweets. So this is an example of a tweet. As our friend and ally is being attacked, we should be standing up unequivocally with Israel. Instead, Bernie Sanders and AOC are trying to prevent Israel from defending itself. So this is a pro-Israel tweet, but really attacking the Democrats. So what I wanted to look at is, okay, how many of these tweets about Israel are really just political tweets attacking the other side? So this is, each dot represents a member of Congress, and this is the percent of their tweets about Israel that mention the Democrats. So you see that a lot of Republicans, when they tweet about Israel, all their tweets are mentioning Democratic members of Congress. And this is when the Congress changes power, this is the example of how the members of Congress change their the percent of tweets that have mentioned Israel and politics at the same time. And finally, this is a timeline. Each dot represents a tweet about Israel over 2021. And these are Republican members of Congress tweets, and the red dots are tweets that mention Democrats. And so you can see that in certain days, all the tweets about Israel are basically tweets that are attacking Democrats and not just pro-Israel tweets. So this is the work I did with Twitter data, and I'd love comments and suggestions and whatnot during the break. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, because we want to give you a break, we have time for one question. So it better be a good one. I'm looking at you people on the internet. Nothing yet. Any questions? People want to break. Oh, there's a question.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. You mentioned the AI in the research. What is the part that AI takes right now in data visualization? And you have a whole labeling process that you have to do with big data before you even start to build a model and use it in data visualization. So what part does it take in your research now?
Well, I use machine learning, just to be clear, not AI. There's a nuance of a difference, but an important one. And so in my work, it was basically that I was trying to teach the algorithm how to predict the tweet. But I'm sure Amanda would probably be much better at answering the AI question in general.